I went to see Wonder Woman on Saturday, and boy oh boy, that was definitely a movie in which Wonder Woman featured heavily. I liked it quite a lot. This video, though, is only somewhat about Wonder Woman. Mostly it's about armour. Because I've been wanting to talk about armour in fiction for a while, and this seems like an opportune time. A while ago I was browsing the Steam store, as you do, and came upon this beauty. I'm informed that most people in the game, including most of the other women, wear more clothes than this, but it brought me great and hilarious joy, because this outfit is stupid on a fantastical level. To the people who are already rushing to the comment section to tell me that this lady's armour is purposefully boobtastic because the free market is God and there's always going to be demand for scantily clad women in video games, chill. Because it is indeed the case that as long as there is a market for boob windows there will probably be. But suspension of disbelief means that when you create a world, you want the rules in it to be consistent. In other words, you want people to say, oh cool, not yeah right. If you are in the Star Wars universe, you can have Jedi who have laser swords and magic powers. You cannot, however, launch yourself into space without a suit using the power of hugs. Even in magical fictional worlds, generally the rules of common sense still apply. So let me explain my problem with this outfit. Because it's not that she's half naked per se, it's not even that she has a giant boob window which extends down to her sternum, which is basically like having a target that says, shoot and or stab me here! I mean, if you're engaging in combat, then yeah, that would be the dumbest thing ever, but I assume she's a squishy ranged class, and so she could basically go into battle with no clothes on at all, and that wouldn't really matter much. No. The problem is that her clothing is meant to be armour, and it's failing so badly at it that it's really distracting. Look, I admit, I'm not gonna love it if you send your necromancer into battle wearing lingerie, but at least it would be light and easy to move in. And it's not unheard of for people to fight with no clothes on. But the advantage of clothing, and I mean actual clothing, not just underwear, is that it does provide some measure of protection. Not against edged weapons or arrows, obviously, but against things like the elements, rolling, crawling, tripping on sharp rocks. You could put your lady necromancer in any kind of clothes that you like, and while I may think, well, that looks stupid, it's not gonna ping my suspension of disbelief by the bra strap the way this does. But armour is not equivalent to clothing. Armour in the real world tends to be a fine balancing act between ease of movement, degree of protection, availability of materials, and about a bajillion other things. And one of those other things is how awesome it looks, so sometimes practicality does take a byball. For example, as far as I know, boob plate, which we'll get to in a minute, never existed historically, but this? Totally a real thing. Gotta love those 16th century codpieces. Generally speaking with armour, the more protected you are, the more heavy and or cumbersome your armour is. Lighter armour tends to afford less protection, but does allow more freedom of movement. If you're wearing armour though, it should be capable of doing its job. If your heavy metal armour protects your shoulders but fails to protect your torso area, you know, the bit which contains your heart, lungs, stomach, liver, kidneys, it is worse than useless. You would have been better off going into battle in a bikini, because at least then you would have a lot of freedom of movement. Though as I mentioned, it would still be kinda stupid to go into battle in a bikini because clothes are good for protecting you from things which aren't weapons. And so you're wondering what this has to do with Wonder Woman? It's like this. I really do not envy Lindy Hemming, the costume designer for Wonder Woman, because she had a really difficult job in which she had to balance many contradictory things. I mean, first of all, Wonder Woman's outfit is iconic. In the comics, maybe you can get away with having different iterations which provide more coverage, but if you ask the average person on the street, what do you think of when you hear Wonder Woman? They're gonna say Linda Carter, 1970s, leotard and hot pants. And so Lindy Hemming's first order of business had to be to create a costume which evokes this, but fits in with the setting, which is no mean feat. And then she has to create armour for the Amazons, which is at least visually harmonious with that outfit. And that's the really tricky part. I mean, Wonder Woman is functionally invincible anyway, and so it doesn't matter that she's baring her neck and her shoulders and her thighs. It also doesn't matter that her gilded leather bustier armour is kind of got a boob plate thing going on, but it would matter to the Amazons. I gotta say, I'm not a big fan of boob plate, which in this context is armour shaped like two separate breasts. I mean, boob plate doesn't technically have to be made of metal plate, but it's a terrible idea regardless. Moulding metal or leather, as it is in most cases, around your individual breasts would 1. be hella uncomfortable. 2. Guide swords directly to your sternum, which is exactly where you don't want them to go. Breastplates are generally flat or very slightly convex so that sword blows or arrows or whatever glance off to the side. Putting a big divot down the middle does basically the opposite of that. Oh, and 3, if your breastplate is made of metal, then if you fall face first onto the battlefield, you may well crack a couple of ribs or worse on those points. Yeah, great plan. Now, the ancient Greeks had a whole lot of different kinds of soldiers and warriors, and they wore a very wide range of outfits. So I'm generally really kind of down with the Amazon's sort of molded leather corset thing look. I actually think it looks kind of awesome. The look that they went for the Amazon seems to be a lightly modified female version of Greek hoplite armour. It is perhaps quite minimal, but given that some Greek dudes fought in basically a helmet and greaves and sandals and, like, I don't know, a leather skirt or something, it perhaps doesn't seem quite so ridiculous that the Amazons sometimes lack shoulder and neck protection. And since there are some historical examples of hoplite armour which had pec plate, I suppose we can't be too nitpicky. But it seems like it would be trickier and more uncomfortable to create boob plate for the Amazons, when something just slightly different would have worked just as well. The thing is, some of the Amazons do have functional looking breastplates, so it makes me wonder why the others had to have these Madonna cone bra things. Have a look at this model I found on Arm Street. Same basic idea as the Amazon's leather corset things, obviously shaped for a woman with boobs and a waist, but it doesn't have that unfortunate valley in the middle into which all swords will be guided. I know, movie armor doesn't have to be practical, and if your stunt performers can move and fight in it, then it's all good. But I feel like if everyone had gone the neither lifted nor separated route, it would have made me wonder less about their armor. Because seriously, if you're going to be surrounded by enemies trying to kill you, ladies, don't let your armor be one of them. That's all for this episode. Next time we are talking about Mary Magdalene as a precursor to our Jesus Christ Superstar episode. If you'd like a longer discussion on fantasy armor, add